Are you ready to unlock the secrets of brand innovation? Here you'll discover unexpected ways to make your brand soar in value. Get ready for inspiring stories, actionable tips, and insights you'll need to build your brand and learn an entirely new way to fly. This is the Hummingbird Effect. And now your host, Wendy Coulter.
Hi, I'm Wendy Coulter, and I help CEOs unlock the hidden power of their brands. For years, business leaders have focused on marketing tactics, but what truly matters is building a strong brand. Think of it like the Hummingbird Effect. Small innovations in branding can lead to surprisingly big results, increased valuation, stronger culture, and a marketing message that resonates. Today, we're diving deeper into the world of brand building, and I'm thrilled to have with me Dr. Sarah Glova, an amazing leader, keynote speaker, innovator, educator, and champion for women in leadership. And one of the most authentic people I know. I met Sarah when we were serving in leadership for the National Association of Women Business Owners. And I have two fun facts from traveling with Sarah while we were serving together. First, Sarah loves bookstores.
That's a safe one. If you follow me on Instagram, you know that. Okay, that was a good one.
So when we traveled together with Navo, I left Sarah to peruse the Strand. I stayed there a little while.
You did stay with me there for a little while.
And then I got to go to all the thrift stores that were right around that area, which is one of my favorite things.
You went to
do.
multiple thrift stores and came back, and I think I was still like in the same area of the Strand.
That's okay. That was one of my favorite trips. So lots of fun with you. And we both love a good Guinness.
Yes. Is that our second fun fact?
That's our second fun
I love
fact.
these fun facts that you picked about me. I will absolutely accept. Yes.
I'm
Books
trying to
and
take
Guinness.
I'm trying to take lessons from super moderator Sarah because I know how
Thank you
good
for
you are
that.
at this. So
Nice.
I'm a little intimidated to be the host of this today. I also have Hannah with me. She'll be co-hosting today with Sarah, and she's our marketing strategist at Hummingbird Creative Group. So thanks for joining us, you two.
I'm excited to learn more and talk to you, Sarah.
Yeah. Looking forward to it.
So Dr. Glova is a fabulous speaker and moderator with wonderful insights into how to simplify the complexities of business communications and strategy. In fact, Dr. Glova's recent TEDx Talk is a perfect example of the Hummingbird Effect in action. She has achieved over 80,000 views after just 3 months. Amazing.
It's crazy. Actually, we just hit 100. We just broke 100,000.
Awesome.
And I can share that with you because it happened pretty recently. But I know, isn't that crazy? And I know we're going to dive into this, but it's so fun to hear you say that it's similar to the Hummingbird Effect because I do think of it that way. When you said small actions that lead to big results, there were so many small things that I think, and I had people who helped me, so I'll say the team did to help this TEDx get out there. So I'm excited to dive into that.
Well, I'm excited to chat with you about your TED Talk and how seemingly small innovations can lead to big wins, which I think has happened for you. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And just tell us a little bit, give us a little background on you, Sarah.
Yeah, so I think the easiest way to explain myself to folks who I've never met is I like to share that I used to teach at NC State. So go Wolfpack for anybody who's an NC State fan. Yeah. So I used to teach at State, and I taught technical writing for engineers. So engineers love to write, right? So I was their favorite. No. So with my students, I had to kind of convince them, not just that as kind of a younger instructor, I was credible and worth listening to, but also like that the class was worth their time. Like it wasn't just me that I had to convince. I had to convince them that the class needed to exist too. And so it gave me this early practice into really thinking about the audience and who I wanted to serve. And so I used to tell my students, look, your engineering degree is going to get you hired, but I'm going to get you promoted. And so right away I was positioning myself and trying to understand how I could serve those around me. I wanted to share the information that I'd learned, what I knew, but I had to figure out how to make it interesting to the people who were going to use that information. So I started that at State. And then when I was there, I started my own company. And that's how you and I met, was through Navo, as you mentioned. And things took off from there in a roller coaster kind of way, you know, up and down and upside down sometimes and all the things, which we can talk about more. But I started my company back in 2012, which is just crazy. So not as crazy as maybe your story, since what year did you start Hummingbird?
1995.
Dang. So you're about to celebrate a big old anniversary.
A big one next year. Yes, we're working on that party, right, Hannah? She's my superstar planner.
I love it.
And keep me straight.
We all need a Hannah.
Absolutely. So let's dive in.
Hmm?
Can you share a specific instance where a seemingly small change in your marketing or branding strategy led to a significant and positive outcome or results?
Oh, yeah, I've got one. So you already brought up the TEDx Talk. And for those who haven't seen it, I did a TEDx Talk and it was about goal setting. And this is something, I mean, you've heard me talk about this for years. I care a lot about helping people unlock their potential. And I know, Hannah, we're just meeting, but the kind of nerdy thing that you'll hear me say all the time is that we talk about skills as if they're personality traits. Like someone will say, oh, I'm not a good writer, or I'm not a good speaker, as if it's like, oh, my eyes are green, my eyes are brown, I'm tall, I'm short. Like it's a personality trait. It's something that we can strengthen. It's something that we can work on. Like any muscle building activity or any hobby, those are just things that we can work on, not things that we're born with. And so when I looked at goal setting and professional development, I wanted to figure out how to talk about it in that vein. So how can we talk about these things in a way that people really feel like they can grow, they can accomplish big things? And I went around and around and I could not come up with anything that didn't sound like it had already been said. I felt like I had a new take on goal setting, and definitely the authenticity was there and kind of caring about others and making them feel seen in it. But there were other people doing that. What really changed was, and this is a true story, I was talking with a friend about what I was struggling with. And my friend was asking me why it was so important to me to do the talk. And I was like, because more people need this. I mean, somebody could tell me that they wanted to be the next president and I could help them work on that with like a single piece of paper. And he stopped me and was like, well, what do you mean? I was like, well, because it's so simple. Look, here it is. And he was like, I think that I've seen that before. Do you really feel like that one page could help anyone with any goal? And I did. And that's what we built the TEDx around. So it was a small shift. It was still all the things I wanted to share about goal setting, but it was changing the way that I was delivering it so that it felt really accessible. It's just a page. Anybody can grab a piece of paper or a napkin at the airport and fill this out. And so that small shift, I think it's the reason that TEDx has done so well, because it's not just the promise of we're going to talk about goals. We're going to talk about it in a way that anyone can work on it and finish the talk and have a plan in place.
So how was the engagement in that as you moved forward with the talk?
At the talk was really interesting. And if anyone has given a TEDx talk, every TEDx is different. So there's TEDx Raleigh, TEDx Apex. If you're local, you can do TEDx NC State. I got to participate in the first ever TEDx Shaw University, so the inaugural. And it was at the beautiful SD Hall, which is the first building built for African-American women education in the country, like just the history there. So it was a very special venue. We also had an amazing team helping to produce it, amazing team putting it together. One of the things they did was they brought in some really bright lights. And it was very helpful because on the video, everything is very well lit. And at the event, I think everyone could see the speakers. But Wendy, I should have practiced that talk with flashlights pointed at my eyeballs. So when you ask me how the engagement was at the talk, I don't know because I couldn't see anyone. And I couldn't really hear them either. And part of it was just, the anxiety of when you're up there. It's almost like being on an airplane and you just have the like in your ears. You can't really hear. So during the talk, I didn't really feel the engagement. Luckily, I had practiced it so much that I was able to keep going and just hope that behind the blinding lights were people smiling. And that's kind of what I was imagining. When it was published online, the engagement was pretty quick. You don't know when your TEDx is going to come out. It just comes out. There's no notification. How I knew is I all of a sudden got like 15 LinkedIn messages offering to help market my TEDx talk. And I was like, what TEDx? Do I have a TEDx? And that's how I knew to go Google myself and find the link. When I clicked on the link, it already had a couple hundred views. I honestly thought it was a mistake. I thought maybe it had been out for a few days and it had just come out and it had those views. And so I think the engagement started with the title. So when you talk about these small actions, thinking about what the title is, what promise are you making to people who are going to spend their time with you in this TEDx video? What are they going to get out of it? If they hadn't watched it, what would they be missing? Those kinds of questions. And so a lot of that went into the idea for the title, which is how to make a plan for your goal. It's just a single page. We made sure to get that single page in there. And I wanted to call it that, how to make a plan for your goal. That's just a single page. The people I worked with were like, that's not strong enough. It's how to achieve your goal with just a single page. And being someone with a background in academics, I was like, we can't promise that. We don't know if you can achieve it. It's just the promise of planning. And they're like, no, but they can. We believe in this. Let's do it. And so it's how to achieve your goals with a single page. And I think that promise is what started the engagement.
Yeah, and that's so simple, right? Like you brought it down to that concept of a single page. To me, that's kind of innovative. So talk about that as innovation. How did the initial situation kind of change over time?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more.
That's a great question. I'm glad you said that because I think sometimes we hear simple and we think easy. And simple and easy are not the same things. And I don't have to tell you all this because you have this amazing marketing work that you do in background. So you know, sometimes the simplest concepts are the hardest ones to come up with. So when I tell you that I wrestled with this, I mean, I wrote 7 different TEDx Talks. And I don't mean,
Wow.
like, oh, I changed a word here or there 7 times. I mean 7 completely different talks. And I was in that process when I met with my friend and told him, well, I could help you plan a goal on a single page. And that's where the epiphany kind of happened. So it took a lot of work to get to that simple idea. And I think when I talk to folks about innovation, it's really interesting to hear what people think of as innovation. I think a lot of times it involves a guy with a black turtleneck.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it has a lot in the world, but no, not always.
Right. So we think of like a Steve Jobs or we think of innovation as like a light bulb moment or something. And, what we see in the research, and I really like looking at this, is innovation is more about the practice of doing and doing often and experimenting than it is about the one big idea. Innovation isn't the light bulb moment. It's more the practice of working on something every day, the willingness to experiment. When I was writing those 7 TEDx Talks, I had to be willing to finish writing one and then ball it up and throw it away. I mean, but we get so discouraged, right? After like the 3rd one, it's like, really, I just wrote a 3rd one and said, no, thank you. But what I've learned, and I think we could talk about how this relates for business ownership too, but you just learn that that's not wasted effort.
Right.
Whatever I did in that 3rd TEDx, it didn't end up in the last TEDx, but it's going to be somewhere. It helped me get to the 7th TEDx. And there might be another talk that I give one day where I might pull something from that. And so for me, the innovation was really just kind of the grind of it, like really sitting down and being willing to continue experimenting, to continue trying, to continue practicing, to not give up when it felt sticky and confusing and frustrating, and to keep going. I think that's when we see innovation happen. And for groups that are looking to build innovation, a lot of times one of the first things I talk to them about is, what does it look like at your organization when something doesn't go well? What does it look like? And I don't love to use the word failure because there's a lot going on with that, but more with experimentation. If I'm experimenting and I write something that doesn't resonate, is that considered an experiment? Are we like, well, it's all data, let's keep moving? Or is it like, oh, that didn't go well? Guess we got to shut down the podcast. We had that one episode that didn't work well. Let's shut it down, people, right? So what does that experimentation look like? And it's the organizations that do have that healthy approach to experimentation and do support their teams with experimentation that see these innovations.
Well, and I think as a business owner who's been in business for a really long time, I'm just going to take it there since you kind of started that path for me. We think early on in business that we've got to do everything right. We've got to have a plan. We've got to know where we're going. And what I've learned and part of what I look at as the hummingbird effect is that experimentation that you're talking about in business, where you're doing these small things over time. And as long as you keep it moving in the right direction, maybe you don't do everything right, but you're going to have these huge results in the end. It's going to be amazing. And maybe there's not an end for me. There's not been an end yet, right? But everything just keeps getting better and better and better. And it's not how I imagined it at all necessarily. No. So it's those little happy experiments that turn out great.
I love the phrase happy experiments. And this is such a callback to kind of our history together. I remember when I met you, you joked at the beginning of the podcast about being intimidated because I do a lot of moderating and now you're hosting. And that just, I smiled so big when you said that because I remember meeting you and other women in NABO and being so intimidated. I was so intimidated. I mean, you're so put together all the time. You always have this, and I've known you for a long time. And so I know that we can joke about this. You always have this amazing like hair and outfits and you seem really put together and you've got your stuff going on. I'm a mess. And you know that about me. Like I have a lot going on behind the scenes and know in myself that with that, I'm a little bit messier. But in getting to know you over the years,
You
what I know
learned
is
that I'm a mess too.
no, I wasn't going to say that at all. What I was going to say is that you aren't afraid of the mess.
Right.
You also
Absolutely
don't mind
not.
if things get a little bit messy. And you are willing to help be a part of the team that gets in and figures out what's going on. And you're not the person who's going to always value showing up perfectly over showing up at all. And I really appreciate that about you because when we met, it was still a really interesting time in what I think of as like the girl boss movement. Right? When we went, it was right around 2012, 2013, 2014. And I was getting into entrepreneurship. I was coming from academia. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I go to a NABO event hoping to learn. And there was still a little bit of that culture of like, if someone asks you how you're doing, you say, I'm doing great. Everything is fantastic. Business is good. And that's it. That's the story you need to be showing. And that's not my vibe. And so I tried to show up that way. And I even had, this is embarrassing, I had a necklace at the time that even said like girl boss on it. I mean, I was really trying to embrace it. And you were one of the first people that I let like see a little bit of the real Sarah. And you really encouraged me to keep showing up that way. So I don't think of you, even though I was intimidated by you and I continue to be intimidated by how well you do all of the things that you do. But I know that I can show up authentically around you. And I think that's an example of the kind of permission we need for that experimentation to have that innovative mindset. I know if you and I work on a project together, we can be really innovative because I don't mind showing you something that's not perfect, that's not finished, that's not right, because we can work on it from there. And I can trust that I can share that with you.
Well, and I think I came from that background where I made the mistake of being too authentic a few times in those spaces and was told not to do that, right? And so
like you got the feedback of like, no, don't be authentic.
Don't do that. And,
which is the opposite of what you gave me.
Oh, well, that's why, right? That's why, because I didn't want to do that to someone else, right? That's a struggle. It's a struggle when you're being your authentic self and then someone saying, don't do that, don't do that.
So you really got feedback that was like, no, you're too authentic.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think any woman can relate to being told they're too much, right? We've all heard that once or twice. But the idea that somebody really told you like, no, don't show up that authentically.
Right. Yeah. Well, I love it. Callie now says, I'm too much. She says it about herself. And I love that.
Yes, Callie. Callie, I want to be Callie when I grow up. I love Callie.
So I know Hannah's over here going, where are we on the script? No. You want to reel us in?
Yeah, no, there's a lot to kind of go back on. We've started with TEDx and we've gone to more of just being authentic as yourself and it'll have you grow. But just kind of looking back by accepting your failures as growth or looking at it as growth, but also finding new ways to present your idea for your TEDx, you were able to create an impressive TEDx talk, which has gotten, what did we say, 100,000? Over 100,000 views. But with the Hummingbird Effect, we are looking at the small changes that you didn't know were going to come of that. So do you have any that came of this that you weren't expecting at all, but you can relate back to those decisions and those changes that you made?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the small changes that ended up having a big effect is the decision to focus on that one page that we talked about in the beginning. The big effect that that's had is I get hired to do keynotes now all the time of helping groups create a one-page plan. And it's not just around goal setting, but I get nonprofits that hire me. Can you help us turn our giant strategic plan into a one-page plan that we can share with multiple stakeholders that everyone feels a part of? Associations, can you help us create a one-page plan that all of our members can get behind? Companies, can you come to our annual retreat or our shareholder meeting and help us get clear? What does it take to accomplish a really big goal? And can you talk about the one-page plan? I was not expecting that. I hoped that the TEDx would give me some credibility, right? I've joked that the TEDx is another PhD that folks can get, right, these days. Right. So I was hoping for some credibility, some ethos from doing it. I wasn't necessarily picturing that it would directly connect me to a way that I could support people in the way that it has. And that's been a really beautiful, I think it's a testament to that alignment, being willing to experiment until I had that alignment I would talk about that TEDx anytime, anywhere. You could take me on vacation to Paris and somebody could be like, oh, we're at this beautiful spot. We're having wine. Oh, tell me about your TEDx. And I would be excited to do so, right? It wouldn't be like, oh, no, I'm off the clock. Like, let's, my husband would be like, oh, here she goes. Because I would be like ready to go. So finding something that I genuinely love that much that ties all my work together, it took time. It ended up being simple, but it took a long time to get it to be that simple. But the effect that small tweak of not just talking about professional development, but situating it into this one page has led to a lot of really cool work.
Are you ready to find your own Hummingbird Effect and enable your brand to take flight? Wendy would love to chat with you. Schedule a 30-minute call with her to discuss how she can help transform your brand. Visit the link in the show notes to book your appointment or send an email to wendy@hummingbird-creative.com. Take your brand to new heights. Schedule your quick 30-minute call today.
And so what would you say you learned from it?
Ooh, well, I haven't told this story yet, but I'll share it with you for Wendy. I struggled to figure out what to wear. And the reason I don't talk about that a lot is because I don't love that women get asked questions that sometimes men don't ask. Like, no one's going to be like, if my husband did a TEDx, no one's going to be like, how'd you decide what to wear? Right? But that's maybe something we ask women. So I hesitate to bring this up, but it's very relevant. I went through so many outfits, and I even rented a couple outfits from like a Nuuly or a Rent the Runway type of service, and just nothing felt like me. And I really couldn't decide who I wanted to show up as. There's this great quote that's like, when a woman says she has nothing to wear, it just means there's nothing in her closet that looks like how she wants to feel that day. And that was it. I had clothes, but nothing that felt like me. And I was really struggling with it. And I called my sister. I was like, I need to come raid your closet. And of course, because it's me and it was like 2 days away at this point, and I really needed to figure out something. So my sister asked me what my favorite outfit was. And without skipping a beat, I was like, well, my black leather jacket, but I can't wear that.
Of course you can.
So
and you did.
A lot of TEDx speakers do a great job of showing up really professionally and wearing, like a suit or something. And I was speaking a lot about my experience as an entrepreneur and a journalist. And a lot of times in those spaces, I wear my black leather jacket. Because am I allowed to say this on this podcast? It makes me feel like a badass, right? Like it just makes me feel like I'm here and I can do important things. And so I wore black jeans, my black boots that I have had for years that I wear all the time, and my black leather jacket. And it made me feel really confident. And I remember showing the outfit to my husband and being like, okay, I think I'm going to wear this. And he was like, and he'd seen me try on 15,000 at this point, right? So he was very like, is that appropriate for a TEDx? Not wanting to say like, aren't you supposed to wear a suit? I could see we've been together for a long time. So I could see what he wasn't saying, right? He wasn't muting his face, as we say. And I was like, you know what? Actually, I don't want your opinion. I feel really good. I'm going to wear this. So I just need you to tell me it looks great. And he was like, it looks great. Yeah. So I know that sounds like a really small thing, but what I learned from that is even if I had showed up and everybody else's outfit had been really fancy, I think I still would have felt pretty good. Versus if I had decided to wear one of those outfits that didn't feel like me, and then I had gotten up there, and like I was telling Wendy, those flashlight lights were in my eyes. I wasn't getting feedback from the audience. Would I have had some of that support and comfort that I had from like being in my favorite outfit and feeling comfortable in my favorite shoes? I don't know. Like that really could have affected how I delivered that talk, because I ended up kind of wearing my favorite armor, if you will. And so I learned from that I just really want to continue trying to show up to spaces in a way that I feel really comfortable. And I did wear a purple shirt for you today, Wendy.
Thank you.
Because I love your brand so much. But yeah, a lot of times I think if that's something that's important to you, recognizing that it's okay to value that, to value kind of your comfort and your preferences over maybe others' expectations, that it's okay to lean into that. So I think that was maybe my biggest takeaway from the experience.
I like that. That takeaway a lot. That's a nice way to look at it as well.
So how has that changed your perspective on maybe other things that you're doing for marketing yourself as a speaker?
Ooh, so my marketing is an interesting space to be in because unlike a lot of the clients you work with, I'm a pretty small operation, so it's just me. And I know you work with some thought leadership groups too, but a lot of times you're dealing with company brands that it's a lot of folks. with my brand, it's Larry Long Jr. says this. 3 people, me, myself, and I. And when I'm managing my own brand, I have to think about how much of it I want to be me and how much of it I want to be the thought leadership, the points that I'm trying to share. So like me is in my face and thought leadership is in things like the 1-page plan. And there was a time where I would have leaned more toward the thought leadership. Oh, no, don't make it about me, make it about that. But what we see resonating with people right now is the authenticity. And that's a genuine value of mine. So I'm being authentic when I embrace that authenticity. And so something that I'm applying to my marketing a lot right now is like really showing up how I show up. And so 3 years ago, if I was going to do Instagram Reels or LinkedIn content, it would have been on days like this, right? I literally used to have a goal in my head of if I'm dressing up and going somewhere and I've got makeup on my face and my hair isn't in a bun, I need to do at least 2 reels. Like that was one of the goals. And I don't do that anymore. Now it's like, oh, I'm in gym clothes. I guess I better go sit by the window so I have some good lighting. But otherwise, it's like I've done Instagram Reels with pimple stickers on before. And I've spoken a lot about women business owners, feeling pressure not to show up as anything but perfect and how we can make space and how that helps more women business owners to stay in this and be resilient. They're able to show up as themselves. And so showing up in my brand has me, not just this version of me, because I don't always look like this, but like the version of me that you sometimes see when I drop off my kids at 8 a.m. at school, right? Like it's not pajamas, but it could be pajamas, Sometimes that makes it on Instagram and lately even on LinkedIn. And I've found that my brand has a certain tolerance for that. And I think what's important is that's not tips for everyone's brand. What it is instead is this idea that it's okay to make it yours. I'm not saying that everyone should show what they look like at any given point of the day. Maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't. But I think it's the permission to figure out what works for you.
When I think I hear you saying, to make it yours is also tied to that differentiation concept, right? Of what, for you, it's personal, what differentiates you, your life, what you're doing, how you're pulling in the balance of your family and all of that into your business and your life. But even for businesses, I think that advice to, be unique, find your differentiation. Don't just show up the way you're expected to show up all the time.
It's so true.
Take some risk. So expand on that for me a little bit with what advice you would give others out of this.
Yes, I love, one, if you have any questions about this, my advice is talk to Wendy. 2, with differentiation, I think folks, a lot of times they feel really nervous of, oh, no, we don't want to say no to anybody. We're for everyone. Anyone can hire us. If we talk too much about what makes us different, we're going to, only be interesting to this audience and not this one. And I get being afraid of that because you're afraid that you might turn away business. But I have found that really focusing on who you want to serve and then talking about how you're different for that group, it actually doesn't limit who you're going to work with. It really opens doors because it makes it so much more clear for people. Like, oh, I understand. Okay, so if I know that Hannah is a marketing strategist, when I meet somebody and Hannah can solve their problem, it's easier for me to recommend Hannah. But if Hannah is somebody who can, help brands to succeed, okay, well, I'm going to have more trouble identifying when there's a problem that Hannah can solve. So a lot of the work I've done to try to differentiate, early in my career, I would have been scared of some of it because it makes me a little bit more specific. And I would have been afraid that that would mean, oh, I'm saying that I'm not for everyone. Whereas now I understand it as I am helping people understand what problems I can solve and how I do it differently than other folks who they might want to hire. And it's not competitive. I have a favorite phrase, which is, you can't compete with me because I genuinely want you to win too. It's not about being competitive. It's about being really clear about who I am and what I can do so that if I can help you, I'm there to help you. And if not, I know so many people. Tell me what you need. I'm going to help you find the person that can help you.
We've talked about it in our past episodes of being willing to find that differentiator and really like just take it by the reins and ride it because it does resonate with your people and it does make a big change, but also knowing when to draw the line. And my question was going to be like, how have you done it? But you've gotten there.
No, I'm so glad you asked that. It was a great question, Hannah, because it lets me share something I haven't yet, which is, what about when you're trying to find that differentiation?
Right.
What we're talking about right now is a TEDx that I did where I found that. I talked about the 1-page goal. I got really clear. We got simple, but that was a process. And hopefully I've highlighted that it was a process and it took some time. The same is true for my brand differentiation. So really figuring out who I serve, what that target audience looks like, how I can speak to that target audience. It wasn't like filling out a tax form. And I think a lot of people think it is. It's like they go and buy something and they're like, okay, I'll do this, I'll do this, I'll do this, and it'll add up. And okay, here's my target audience. And it just doesn't work that way.
It's not that easy,
You
right?
have to experiment a little. And so when I meet women business owners and professional speakers who are women especially, they're so nervous about this part. How do I describe what I do and who I serve so that I can have a perfect elevator speech? That way, when I meet someone at a networking event, I can tell them exactly what I do, and then they will want to sign me as a client. And it's like, okay, well, that does not exist.
Right.
That elevator speech, let's let go.
Right.
If we let that go, that elevator speech does not exist. Instead, why don't you try it out? Try it, see how it goes. Pay attention to the results. If you need to pivot, you can. But let's get some data. Earlier, Wendy said, it's the old idea of we gotta do everything right. We don't. It's not about right or wrong. Everything is data. When I started as a professional speaker, I had a whole section of my website that was devoted to a topic that I really thought people wanted to hire me about, and nobody really interacted with it or clicked on it, so I got rid of it. But not after trying to start a Friday series where I posted about it on Instagram and LinkedIn, every Friday for weeks. But then I realized it wasn't tracking and I took it off. When I have an idea for a talk that I really want to develop, sometimes I'll put it in my speaker catalog and see if anyone buys it. And then if they do, I can always develop it. But it's about that approach to experimentation versus like trying to fill out a tax form and being like, okay, I got my target audience, let's go.
We used the word earlier, surprises, too, which I love because there's so many surprises around the corner and you just don't know what's about to happen. And you experienced it with coming up with your topic. You experienced it with deciding what to wear. Are there any other surprises kind of along the way? Because that's a lot of what the Hummingbird Effect is about, too, is these surprisingly big changes that happen that you might not really be prepared for.
Yeah. So I think one of the reasons I've always been able to deal with surprises is because I have this approach of it's all experimentation. You were joking earlier, until you get to a finish line, well, who knows if I'm really going to get to it. I don't imagine a day where I'm really done with this work. I have some big goals, but to me, there isn't like a flag on a mountaintop that I'm trying to work toward necessarily, that once I get there, I'm going to be like, okay, check, done. And so because of that, I am embracing the process a lot, which means when surprises come along, when I get a group that says, hey, we love your talk on a one-page goal, but could you help us adapt it for local government? We really want folks to feel included in the development of a strategic plan, but we feel like they're struggling with the process of that. Can you use your one-page plan to talk about strategic plans in local government? Well, I don't know. I don't know if I can do that. But how about I say, I think that that's really interesting. Let's jump on a call and talk about it. And then I just ask a hell of a lot of questions until I really feel like I understand their problem. And then to what Hannah and I were talking about earlier, I either recognize, yes, I can solve this problem, or now I know who can solve this problem for you. And I can help build my community and strengthen that community by sharing that with somebody else.
Yeah, you're so great at that. And so let's talk about the women's business community, because I have another Hummingbird Effect in mind that you and I have worked on together, and you tell the story so well. And so I'll kind of lead you into this one. So when you and I were serving, you were president of NAWBO Greater Raleigh, and I was president-elect. We had this idea, and we founded the North Carolina Women Business Owners Hall of Fame.
You're giving me too much credit. It was your idea.
Well, it was a surprise.
You heard about it.
I heard
You
about
heard about
it.
another state that had it,
Right.
and you brought it to me, and you were like, this other state has a hall of fame for their women business owners.
Exactly.
We need one.
Yeah. And so we did that, but I feel like there was a hummingbird effect that happened that led us to need that in the state of North Carolina. And it goes way back, much longer before you and I, with a group of women who could not get financing without a male co-signer.
Yes.
I'm going to let you continue the story.
Oh, I'm almost giddy. I'm so excited. I didn't know we were going to get to talk about this today, but you know how people say, like, thank you for coming to my TED Talk when they talk about something they can talk about in their sleep? This is that thing for me. So what a lot of folks don't know, and what I didn't know until I joined NAWBO, is that pretty recently, women business owners were required to have male relatives co-sign. even if they were 100% owners of their business, even if they were in good financial standing, even if they had a flower shop and what they were trying to get signed is a loan so that they could buy a van, and the flower shop was 100% theirs, and maybe they weren't married anymore. Maybe their husband had passed away, maybe their father had passed away, and they had to get their high school age son to co-sign. It wasn't always enforced, but it wasn't made illegal until this date. Do you want to guess what year it became illegal for banks to require women business owners to have male relatives co-sign on things?
My first thought was to, go early.
Yeah.
But then I feel like it's a trick question. So I'm going to try to meet in the middle and say like 1972.
That was an amazing guess.
That's a great
and
guess.
I have literally had people guess like, I don't know,
But
like
it is not
1850. And it's like,
1850.
we had a lot of other things we needed to vote on before we got to this. So it was 1988 that it became illegal for banks to require.
The 90s,
So you were very close.
Crazy.
And I put it into context for people, like it was very close to the year that we no longer put baby in a corner because Dirty Dancing came out. Like it was around the time of Dirty Dancing that women business owners could still be required to have this male co-signer on their documentation, on their legal.
And I always talk about it because I started my business in 95, and my first business loan, I had to have a male co-signer. Now, they didn't require it, but you go through the process and you start to realize what's going to make this easier, right? And so whether it was required in the 90s or not, I experienced it still in the 90s. It was very hard for a woman to get a loan on her own.
Yeah. And so there are two reasons I love to talk about it. One is what Wendy just alluded to, which is we talk a lot about how women don't get enough financing. When we look at the pie of whether it's VC money, angel money, like whatever it is, women are not getting enough financing. Women business owners are not getting a big enough piece of that pie. And we love to blame women. We love to say, well, let's have a class about how to negotiate. Let's have a class on how to pitch to investors. How about we talk about the systemic effects? If I knew a woman business owner when I was growing up, that woman business owner could have been required to have male relatives co-sign on things. So my understanding of my options, my financing options, is based on that was so freaking recent. And the fact that we don't talk enough about the systems in place and the background and the relationship that women have with financing, some of it's very empowered. Women were used to turning to their communities, getting revenue and generating revenue way before they went to get investment or financing. And those are strengths. They are different approaches. And so recognizing that is really important to me. So that's one. But two is that in North Carolina, in the state of North Carolina, a group of women business owners got together in 1978, so 10 years before this became illegal. And they started talking about how to change it. There was an ad put in the Raleigh Times by a woman named Mary Diener, and it basically said like, hey, here I am at Park Office Drive, like, please come meet at my office and we'll talk about being a woman business owner. And that's what started the NAWBO Greater Raleigh chapter well over 40 years ago. And so for over 10 years, women in this state went to DC and advocated for what is now known as HR 5050. It passed under the Reagan administration, and one of the many things it did was make it illegal for banks to require the male relative cosigner. And so the idea that as a woman business owner in North Carolina, I'm connected to this legacy of women like Mary Diener and these other women who advocated for something that has had a direct impact on my life as someone who uses a credit line in her business and has sought other kinds of financing. It's a really incredible legacy to be a part of, and I'm glad to know about it.
Well, and it's such a hummingbird effect that we're sitting here today and we've had 7 years of winners of inductees to the Hall of Fame. And you're one this year, so congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
Right? And, you're living that legacy that I remember telling you, Sarah, when I started coming to NAWBO, these ladies, like, I was just so in awe, right? I was so in awe of these ladies, and their stories just are not anywhere being told. Like, to even find much about Mary Diener prior to her winning Hall of Fame was really, really
We
difficult.
struggled with that. So Mary Diener,
Right.
the woman that we brought up who put that ad in the Raleigh Times, she was the first president of NAWBO Greater Raleigh. She, we think, was the first woman business owner in RTP. And yet when we Googled her, we really couldn't find a lot of information other than an obituary that did a wonderful job of mentioning her family, but didn't talk as much about her advocacy work and her entrepreneurial pursuits related to women and entrepreneurs. Now, if you Google her, thanks to the Hall of Fame, you get to watch a video that shows some of the newspaper clippings. Her son worked with me directly to pull some of that together when she won the Hall of Fame award. That's now preserved forever. I mean, the idea that it's so much more about recognizing the individual, it's about the next generation getting to hear these stories, because otherwise they're going to get lost.
Well, I think you and I as moms, that's part of what our vision was, right? It was like we want the younger generations to hear these stories and see these ladies and understand where we came from, where, it was illegal to get a loan without a male cosigner in the family. And these women through today have just like risen above so much. And I think you also mentioned that, it's kind of a superpower that women actually were successful despite all of that.
Yeah, and that's so
And
important, that part of it.
that's the piece,
We offer that framing, that very crucial framing. And I think of one of my favorite examples is Mama Dips, the restaurant in Chapel Hill that's so famous, and Mildred Council, the woman behind Mama Dips. And when she was recognized and we put that video together, thanks to so many people who worked on preserving her story, we were able to put in this tidbit that was like the day that she opened, she used the proceeds from lunch to buy the groceries she needed to serve dinner.
Right.
And that story of resilience and how to survive and thrive, even when the traditional financing options might not be available to you, is so important as we help the next generation feel like they can see themselves in entrepreneurship. And that's part of it. You can go on the website and it's like any video you want to see from any industry. If you want to look at real estate, if you want to look at construction, if you want to see women who are born in North Carolina, if you want to see women who moved to North Carolina, who are first generation Americans, like there are all these stories.
They're all there.
The only common thread is that these are women entrepreneurs who have a tie or a connection to North Carolina. And otherwise, the stories are also different. The backgrounds are also different. The strengths and stories are also different. So it's a really beautiful way to help, hopefully, anyone who's interested in entrepreneurship to really see a part of themselves in it.
Well, I thank you for amplifying stories, Sarah. Our favorite word. It goes back with us for quite a while.
I know. I couldn't help but smile when you said it. I love that word. Well, and I got to thank you because you said the hummingbird effect. I mean, you had this idea. Look at where it is.
Look at where it is. I know. It's amazing.
I remember when we honored Secretary of State Elaine Marshall when she received the award, just looking up at her with awe, thinking when I had to do the LLC paperwork, like it has her signature on everything,
right?
And now I'm like in the room with it. It's just the effect of that and like the way that you see those wing beats kind of amplify out. It's just really beautiful.
When I think, we still are in awe. I mean, I'm in awe of you. I'm in awe of all the younger generation who are making such a big difference in the world today. That they're being
Maggie
honored.
Kane,
Maggie
who
Kane
we're
is
honoring
amazing.
this year. I mean, her
Right.
story and what she's done. And you want to talk
Yeah.
about authenticity.
Absolutely.
I mean, she talks to people in this community and then also talks to Kelly Clarkson on Kelly Clarkson show and then acts like it's normal to do both with the same personality. Like she's amazing. And so, yes, it's not just stories from a long time ago. It's also,
Right.
Who's in this space today and doing big things.
Well, and I think of Gabby. I mean, with Gabby's Grounds and her organization that's doing so much.
Mhm.
I think we've really done something special that, I'm very proud of. And
It's
you're
kind of
right
you
there
to
with me.
use the pronoun we when you talk
Thank
about
you.
it because you are really the one who championed it. I just kind of for the rest of my life, you've got Wendy wants to do it and she wants my support. Sure, just tell me what time to be there.
Well, I just love it's another example of Hummingbird Effect.
It
And,
is.
to see where it came from and how these little differences in the world led us to be here today doing such a wonderful
100%.
thing.
And just to bring it back to branding, I want to call it something you did very early on. You said, this isn't a business award. It's a legacy award. And when we give this award and when we create a selection committee process for we have this whole process for a committee that gets together that's independent from the board that makes the selections based on all the nominations that the organization receives. Some of the criteria isn't just related to how successful was this person in business. It's what did their advocacy efforts look like? How are they supporting and mentoring the next generation of entrepreneurs? Have they done any advocacy that helps to support policies around women business owners? It's really a multifaceted application. And you want to talk about a hummingbird effect. That was an early decision you
It's
made
huge. Yeah.
early on about the position of this organization and what it recognized, and that we're still seeing the effects of that now in a really positive way, I think.
Well, I'm so glad we got to talk about this. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
It's great to have you here on the show today. Thank you so much for giving us your time and giving our listeners your time. And to everyone out there, thank you for your time today. And go forth and find your hummingbird effect.
Thanks for listening to The Hummingbird Effect with Wendy Coulter. We hope you found this episode valuable. Please be sure to rate and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. To learn more or to work with Wendy and her team, go to hummingbird-creative.com.